guys. Well, this is how she normally runs once she's all tuned in. It's still running a little shaky because it's still burning some coolant, but it runs on virtually, I can't even believe how much oil this thing doesn't use, I guess you'd say. It's insane how efficient it is. So this maintains my water at 180 degrees coming in, and I can maintain that temperature within a few degrees. So stick around, check out the video. We'll show you how it goes.
All right, guys, welcome back. Well, it was going good until it wasn't, kind of thing. I did end up installing it after that last video. I put it in my boiler, and I've let it run this whole entire time because it didn't show any signs of having any issues until today. I went to go check on it after I got back from lunch. And yeah, there was flames shooting out the back. So I thought I burned a hole, you know, in the side or something. I never imagined I burned straight through the bottom of this thing. But you can see, I mean, I can put my finger in that one, and that one's on its way. But I did get some ash out of it, but not a whole lot. I mean, it burned extremely clean for, let me turn my light on here. Burned extremely clean for running for almost 4 full days. It's got some buildup on the sides, and I'm not sure it's actually going to cure my problem of burn through on the sidewalls either, but you know what? We're going to rock it. And I guess it doesn't really matter if it burns through because it's not getting through the outside. So all it would really do is end up coming out here and going back into the burner. So not sure that's going to be a problem, but we'll see. And I'm sure running it 4 days straight wasn't a good idea, but it was running so good, and I didn't see any buildup from the top. You know, all I could see when it's in there is that, you know, it looked nice and clean. I thought, heck yeah, this thing's working amazing. And it did. But yeah, I saw flames shooting out the backside, and I thought, well, we better shut her down and check it out. And this is what we found. Holy moly. So what I'm going to do is cut an 8-inch plate of stainless that go around that whole bottom all the way to the outside edge here. And then get that all welded on. And I was worried that I wasn't putting enough air straight down here, you know, to keep the bottom clean, but apparently I was. Anyways, and I took off after the last burn because it's supposed to have 4 slots in it. And they're barely visible, if at all. You can kind of see where it's supposed to be. There's one. There's another one. Well, it's supposed to be, but it pretty well got plugged right up. It was still pumping oil just fine, but it was sitting directly on the bottom of the burner, flat on there like that. So, I mean, not much oil was squeezing out of there. Anyway, so I took that off before I put it in the boiler. And it ran great, man, let me tell you. It's coking up a little bit, but normally I would shut it down every 24 or 48 hours, and that wouldn't be an issue. That's after 4 days straight. Well, almost 4 days straight. I'd have to check the exact time, but we're definitely on day 4. So anyways, and you know, you can see the holes. They're all still wide open. Even these ones way down here at the end are still wide open. But that's what the nozzle looks like. But I think I am going to, now that I'm adding that plate of stainless, I think I'm going to start with 4 holes in between, you know, these 4. So there'll be 4 coming straight down. And maybe that'll help keep this cleaned out too, because it'll kind of blow the oil away from it. But yeah, I'm going to get this all plated with the stainless on the bottom, and then I'll bring you back when I'm installing it in the boiler. All right, well, there she is. Put a piece of 7-gauge stainless on there. Now I had to cut the old center out, and I had that welded on above the bottom of the other chamber, so I ended up having to weld it on the inside. Not ideal, but and I changed my mind 3 or 4 different times on how I was going to do it, and then decided to just cut it all out and weld that stainless in there. So yeah, we got it all welded in there, tested it for leaks, even pressurized it with the blower and plugged off, this port and blew air in here just to make sure we didn't have any leaks. Cause I had a slight leak the first time I didn't catch until, it was running. That might have been part of the issue of why it burned the whole bottom out. But yeah, that's some nice stainless steel. So that should hold up to the heat. Not forever, but better than that mild steel. And that was only 16 gauge that I put on the bottom of it. So kind of figured it wouldn't last very long. But so yeah, I'm going to get this reassembled. You've seen how it goes together in the last video. And if you haven't, check that last video out. Yeah, so I'm going to get this assembled and we're going to put it in the boiler, and I'll show you how I had to do that. I did have a slight problem with the oil feed line, but I'll show you what I did to correct that when we get there. So I'll see you in a second out at the boiler. All right, so we're out at the boiler. I'm going to get this assembled, and I'll just show you. I drilled them 4 extra holes in the very bottom. They're going kind of straight. I kind of angled them a little bit. Not crazy, just kind of hollowed them out a little bit with the drill bit there. And this just goes together like it did before. It just sets in there. That locks in there. That screws together. Nothing new there. But I did have to cut off the pipe because I couldn't get it in the boiler when I had, all this other stuff. I got a small door because it's just a barrel stove door, because this is just a 55-gallon drum inside an old fuel oil tank for your house. So, I mean, it's not huge. This one's 275 gallons on this side, and it goes into the building from here. And then when it returns, there's another one over here. Not sure if you can see but just next to it. And that returns to the bottom of that and then comes out the top and comes back into this one for another heat cycle and goes back into the buildings. This one continuous loop from here to the shop first stop for heat. Then it continues through that heat exchanger along the ceiling and then goes down the wall, goes through the wall into my crawl space, into another heat exchanger in the crawl space. I had to do it that way in there because I have a downdraft furnace, and what was happening, the heat was rising up and causing there's a thermal sensor on your burn chamber, whatever it's called in there, where the flames, anyways, and it was triggering that and causing the heat to come on because it thought the burners were still hot, like it needed to cool them down, but it was actually just the hot water underneath it triggering that sensor. So I had to put a whole nother air handler in the crawl space and then tie into my ductwork, but that's fine. Still runs on a thermostat, you set it and that's what temperature it is. But just ended up being a little harder in there than it was versus the one in the shop because it's a downdraft. It's a totally different style furnace. Anyway, so yeah, just hit that with the ichrometer. That looks about centered. Not sure if you can see that, but that looks good enough for me. And then the whole assembly just kind of slides in there sideways like this. I'm trying to stay out of the way, but it's heavy. And it just slides in there until you can get the fuel line up through this hole. You bring the fuel line right out here. And this is my adapter pipe that I have to just hook in for the air supply, just because of the way it worked out, not because I wanted to. But it works fine. I ran it. Like I said, it was running for 4 days with no issues at all. And it's a tight fit, so it's going to be kind of loud banging around. Hold on, bear with me here. Just want to make sure that's not going to leak air. And the burner is somewhat level. The only thing I did add to it, I had to go buy a compression fitting that went from the 1/4 inch line to 3/8 copper. Because what happened, I stuck my 3/8 copper in there like I did when I burned it on the first, well, on all my videos really. And it leaked. So that's why there's floor dry all over, because I ended up having a drip. It still ran fine, but it was dripping. and I didn't catch it till there was a little bit of a puddle build up here. So anyways, that's why it's all messy. Normally it's a nice clean operation, but I figured I'd show you real life, you know, what can happen. So you got to be watching these things. And that was my fault. I walked away, just expected it to work perfect, you know. And essentially it did work perfect, except for that slight leak. So, and then 4 days later, the bottom burned out of the burner. So anyways, all right, I'm going to shut up and light this thing. So I guess I could walk you through and show you. This is just 3/8 rubber fuel line with a clamp, nothing fancy here. And that just goes onto this copper line. And then gets clamped down tight. All right, so I went and got a new clamp. You know, nothing fancy, just a radiator clamp, small hose clamp. Now I've got the air line hooked up, fuel line hooked up. Now I'll show you. All I regulate it with is this needle valve. And I seriously, that's closed. That's about where I run it. And that is more than enough heat. So, and it is pumped. Someone was asking. I'll show you this. It's a mess right now because I actually had a pump failure too. Because I let it go empty like a big dum-dum. Now I run it through a hydraulic log splitter filter. And I ended up finding a Fram number because it's a third of the cost versus the one that's made for that housing. And that's a lens housing from Tractor Supply. And that's just adapted over. Goes from 3/4 inch pipe thread to 3/4 inch hose thread. This is just a Harbor Freight Drummond 12-volt pump. And that pulls from this 275-gallon tank. And I've got several. And I've got some 330s down there. Yeah, so when I started the season, so this gives you somewhat of an idea how much oil I use. All these were full. And there's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and including the one on my trailer right there. That's my pump setup. I'll show you that another day. What I'm going to do now is go turn on my blower, which is that it's a 2.5 gallon shop vac. This isn't the one I'm using at the moment. This is an old one that burned up, but this is what it is. It's a Craftsman 2.5 gallon, 1.75 peak horsepower, just a tiny little guy. But I run it in the other building because you know, vacuums are kind of loud. So all right, I'm gonna go turn that on and I'll come back and we'll get this thing lit up. Anyways, so we'll just kick the oil on slightly. I like to start it off about, I don't know, I guess it'd be close to a 1/4 turn on a 3/8 needle valve, which isn't much. This thing does not take much oil to run. It burns on about a third of what I was using, so I'm going to be doing way better than I was in the previous 2 years. But, you know, lesson learned, I suppose. So anyways, I'm going to try and get some on this rag here and try not to make a complete mess of myself. I just wiped that out of that pump container. And that's got a hole drilled in it, so with a little return line. So if the pump does leak like it did, doesn't matter. It just goes right back into my tank. So kind of handy. And I always keep the pump right there. I don't ever move it. If I need to pump from another tank, I just move the hose over to that tank. Try to keep things simple, man. So you couldn't mess it up if you wanted to. But you can. I think we probably got some oil in there by now. Oh, you know, we don't, because I didn't even turn the pump on. Let me do that. Jeez. Figures. Get in front of a camera. Can't remember anything for some reason. We're going to light this one. This one doesn't hardly have any oil on it, so. We'll let that burn for just a minute. Maybe we'll try and introduce some air here. Oh, you know what else I didn't do? Tighten this.
Well, I guess my hand's good enough. Gonna introduce the air slow because I'm not lighting it with diesel. If I was lighting it with diesel, I could just give it the beans right off the rip, you know? Because what'll happen with these, that oil's been sitting outside, and it was almost 40 degrees today, which is like t-shirt and shorts weather in Michigan. So, but what happens, you're pumping all that cold oil and cold air, and it can't heat up, so it kind of slows the light down. If we had some diesel in there, this thing would have already been ripping, and I could have set it and walked away by now. It's coming to life here. Not quite ready, but getting there. It might shoot flames out in my face. Oh, there she goes. It's ready. Pull it back out here like that. Shut that door. Woo! She's angry. That's why I usually light it with diesel. It's fine to blow that door right open. Well, this is a very extreme lighting case here. There she goes. She's settling down. Nice thing about that door, it will clean the chimney. We'll get her set and then we'll open the door. Well, we'll open the door now. It's still blowing paper towel out. As soon as I figure out what it wants to do here, she'll calm down. Yeah, so that's what happens when it gets too much fuel in there. I'll step back here and just let it kind of settle down. I'm going to bring you in a little closer. Now with that thicker bottom on there too, it's going to take a minute to get that hot. So that might be affecting the light because it's definitely, it should have been cruising by now. Oh, and you know what? I'm probably sucking water. Yeah, we're sucking pure water too, so that's not helping anything. When I moved the lid to that to my pump housing there, I knocked the hose straight down to the bottom, but whatever, we got to burn it up eventually. It just runs a little nasty on coolant. So yeah, that's what it looks like when it runs on antifreeze. It's a little shaky, not a nice smooth burn like normal, but it is what it is. So yeah, not a perfect example of how it burns, because I opened that up and didn't realize the hose fell down to the very bottom of the tank. Which normally I pull from about 6 inches off the bottom, you know, so I get some coolant, but not pure coolant like we are right there. So that's gonna get angry. So that's just basically pumping what's left in the filter, oil, and the rest is water. I'm looking at my return line and it's like orange. It should be black. I'll show you that. This is how I keep the pump from deadheading. I've just got a T in there and you can see it's orange right now because that's coolant. It should be black. I'm talking black like that, you know. And it's, I can even smell it. It smells like we're burning some Dexcool. If you know cars, you know what I'm talking about. It's that newfangled coolant that eats everything up. Yeah, she's not happy about that at all. But yeah, so there she is. And it doesn't normally run like this. It runs nice and smooth. But even though it's running on coolant and nastier and all get out, we still don't have any smoke coming out of there. So it's a clean burn no matter what you burn. That's why I love this thing, man. All right, guys. Sorry it was such a shaky burn there. But, you know, that's life. You don't always get good oil. Bring you in one more time to show you. That's hot. That's real hot right there. It looks like it blew some out the bottom, too. All right, well, you guys have a great day, and we'll see you in the next one. And I'll crank it up here for you. So she gets it. That's just a little bit more oil, man. That thing comes right to life.